an accomplishment. To me, it was an accomplishment.
It was.
That I had a job. I had I could save money. I bought a house. I had to pay for 30 years, but I finally. So I was pretty lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I was luckier than my father. I think he was working for the WPA in 1937 for 44 cents an hour. No overtime, no health, just 45 cents an hour.
Well, you were a trailblazer. You were a trailblazer, a pioneer in working in jobs that were not open to us back then, ¿verdad?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it was. Francis, you said that you worked also. Tell us about your...
Yes, I worked as a beautician for 36 years. My first job, it was in San Bernardino. And being mistreated, it was by one of my own. The lady that hired me, her sister, unfortunately, committed suicide, so she didn't show up for work. The lady that was working there had me do all work, which I was there for. But she was crediting herself. We were paid 50% of what we made. So she was putting all the work on her column. So I want you to know that I ended up that week she paid me $4.50. And I told her, as a beautician, you know that that's not correct. She couldn't have possibly done all that work without me helping her or doing part of the work. She said, well, I said, so you can keep the $4.25. I said, I can go work as a laborer anywhere and make more money than that. Eventually, she mailed a check to me. She said, give me a chance, I'll be all right. Okay. I left. Then I came to the arcade. I worked for Gladys Marie Altmeyer. And she hired me. But one of the ladies that worked there with her, that was also a beautician, asked her, how dare you lower the shop by hiring a Mexican?
What year was that, Francis?
That was in 45.
Okay.
And she says, the sad part of it that she had been married to a Mexican. So that's why she was bitter towards it. And then from there, I worked for that lady for 9 years. Went to Riverside because the business was slow, and then came back to Colton again. Totally, I worked as a beautician for 36 years. I worked for Francis Donnelly as well. I had beautiful experience. It helped me grow because I saw totally the other side of the world. Although my parents took us out to a lot of places, I had more opportunities. In fact, we would travel. We'd go to Los Angeles. We would have a lot of eat out in restaurants and so forth. But I worked there for 36 years, had a lot of beautiful friends. I still have some of those ladies that I originally started working with that are my friends. And I was able to help my brothers because we were a large family. Your kids, my kids, and our kids. So there was a total of 12 of us. And by working, I was able to help some, being second to the oldest in the family. And also, we ended up buying a house within a block from the shop. Afterwards moved on Rancho and see there was a little shopping center there, grocery store, liquor store, and the beauty shop. So I ended up buying in that area. Also, by being there, I met this lady who her husband had property on Grant between C and Olive. So they were saying...
This is in North Colton. This is in North Colton?
Oh, North Colton, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Everything in North Colton.
Okay.
In the time being, when I was 21, I had bought a house in South Colton that I was renting out. But I wanted to live in this area, in North Colton. So that's when I went to this lady that her husband owned this land, inquiring about a lot, because we wanted our dream. We didn't have any money, but we were dreaming of building a house. And as we went up, the lady answered the door and introduced my husband. And I said that we were interested in buying one of the lots. We wonder how much they were. And she got real nervous. I said, oh, did I come at a bad time? I said, we can come later. No, she says, all right, come in. But I could see the uneasiness on her. So she goes to the phone to call her husband, who at that time, we had a judge in Colton. I've been trying to, but I can't remember his name. I remember the lady that worked for Mrs. Carter. And she says to her husband, honey, here is that little young Mexican girl that does my hair. You know, the little Mexican girl that does my hair. It clicked on right away, Mexican. Oh, I know where you're going. She said, he would like to speak to you. I said, okay. He said, I understand you're interested in one of my lots. He says, but I'm sorry, I can't sell it. I said, you can't sell it? You don't know whether I can afford it or not. Why can't you sell it? Well, I think it would be best if you would buy in South Colton. I think you'd be much happier. I said, I don't think you need to worry about my happiness. I said, he says, well, I think it would be best. And so he says, you understand, I have to think that I cannot depreciate my land. If I sell to you, it will depreciate. I said, what? I said, you're a judge, judging people with an attitude like that? I think you're in the wrong profession. I said, just for that, I will make a point to never live in South Colton, just to prove to you that I don't have to. My husband fought for this country, and we have every right that you have, and maybe even more, because he fought for it. So we left there. Of course, he was upset. I was upset too. And later on, we bought this house where we live at 805 Valencia Drive. But then too, Mr. Grooms didn't know whether to sell it, because on that street there was no Mexicans. And he was afraid that the neighbors would object. We had this friend of ours who was a real estate man, Mr. Hinman, who through him, some of my brothers had brought property already. And he convinced Mr. Grooms and Mrs. Grooms to sell to us because he was qualified, my husband was qualified to get a loan through the state because of being a veteran, having an honorable discharge. And they would get paid in full. He says, but I want payments so that I can have an income. And Mr. Hinman said to him, if you take this full amount, which the house was over $10,000, and he said, you can invest it all at one time and you'd be money ahead. Finally, he agreed to it. And so we didn't have the money. The state wanted $3,000. So my parents lended the $3,000 for the down payment. And we never spent, other than buying groceries and paying the utilities. Never bought anything extra until we paid my parents off, because that's the kind of man my husband is. Right or wrong, it's only right. So that's how we ended up there. But then up the street, I used to do this lady's hair. And she informed me, us here on Valencia choose our friends. We don't just go having coffee with anybody. And I told her, Ms. Shaw, I'm glad to understand that, because I can enjoy my coffee by myself. Fine. I also choose my friends. Believe me, I was taught that very young. Be careful who your friends are or who you call a friend. But I said, as far as I'm concerned, we all live on Mortgage Lane, or is your house paid for? She said, no, we're paying on it. So time went on, and they were going to have a family picture taken. She had to come knocking at my door and ask me a favor. The shop where I worked was closed for a month. My boss had gone back to Indiana. They drove. So she says, Francis, we are having a family portrait taken of the family, and I want my mother's hair done. And she refuses to go to anybody but you. Would you be so kind as come to my house and do her hair for this picture? I said, I'll be more than delighted. She's my friend. I like her. She's very kind to me. So I did it. So you see, it doesn't pay to throw stones, because sooner or later it comes back to you, you know. And so then across the street from us, some homes were built. My brother had built a house there too. And then Gil Garcia, you know, bought farther down the street. Those were the three Mexicans and my brother, Gil and us. And the house directly across the street was built and stood idle for a long time. And this colored couple bought it. And they made the bad mistake. You know, like every couple, we're excited, we want to get into our home. The yard was full of grass, weeds, and they came real quickly and went to the city hall to open the water and electricity, because they wanted us, the house was dusty, never been lived in, and we're pulling weeds and so forth. And the neighbors down the street had the nerve to call me and ask me, would you sign a petition? I said, for what? I don't put my name on just anything. I said, what is a petition? He says, it's about those people that bought across from you. You know, they're colored people. I said, so? He says, well, we don't want them in the neighborhood. Someone from the city hall called this person on Valencia to let him know. I said, why? Is that what you were writing, getting a petition for us to? I said, if they have the money, they have the right to own it, so I wouldn't sign anything. But you know what? They never moved in, so somehow they got him out.
Well, tell us about the Cervantes situation also, Ralph Cervantes.
Oh, Ralph Cervantes, well, he was first in this to buy property in North Colton.
He was also a World War II veteran.
World War II veteran, yes. And he was buying next to
Yeah.
the Arman, next to the Arman, and the Arman didn't want them there. And so they fought it. They went to the court in the little city there in Colton, and they hired lawyers, and Cervantes were forced to find a lawyer. And he said, well, we don't mind her. We don't mind him living there because he's a veteran, but she's from Mexico. But she was a graduate from the University of Mexico. She was no dummy. She had more education than a lot of us. And there was a discussion in the city hall about it, and they met several times. And they got an interpreter because, of course, Mrs. Cervantes just spoke Spanish. And the lawyer turns around and tells the interpreter, I'm sorry, I can't interpret word by word. She's using words that I've never heard and not familiar with because she was so well educated. So they finally let it be, but they had a struggle. Ours was not as bad as theirs, of course.
Did they get the house after?
They got the house, yes. And the Arman, I understand, by Mrs. Cervantes told me, later on he apologized to them, you know. But he put them through all that unnecessary experience, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the same thing even in high school, when my brother one of them was going to school. Well, we had several, but this particular one was going. So they called us in. Well, my mother didn't speak English and didn't understand it either, so I went with my dad, with my stepfather. Mr. McIntosh wanted to inform my father that my brother was dating, they thought, she was just a friend, a white girl. And my father said, or stepfather said, has he been rude? Has he been, what is it? He said, but don't you see she's white? And I said, yes, but look at my son. He's light. So if they attract to each other, plus they're in school, they're not getting married. Well, I thought you would like to know. I don't think you need to inform me. My brother dated many girls after that, but it was the idea. He is not good enough for this girl, obviously. You know, I don't know.
And Sal was talking about attitude that hurt him. I think that was the general attitude of the high school and the people that work at the high school, that this was not going to happen.
Yes, that's
Really?
right. And we made sure that for our daughters, they had every right anybody had in this world, as long as they led a straight life. Fortunately, but you know what? We only had our girls in public school for kindergarten. And then they went to Catholic school. When the school closed, then the oldest girl went to St. Bernardine's and graduated from Aquinas and graduated for the University of Santa Clara, all through Catholic school. Our second daughter went to kindergarten, Mrs. By Connie. She's a little Japanese teacher, lovely lady that taught her. But anyway, she went into Catholic school up to the 6th grade, I believe. 7th and 8th, she went to Holy Rosary, then to Aquinas, and attended UCLA. She didn't graduate, but she attended UCLA. And so we tried to expose them to a different way of, they had piano lessons, they had ballet dances, all registered in the library, played sports, totally to a different, we discussed politics with them if we're in the mood, or literature or so forth. So we wanted them to have opportunities that we didn't have.
Are they married now?
Both married to brothers. Our oldest daughter has 2 children. One, the oldest, her girl, a graduate from Long Beach State. Her boy is in the film business. Our youngest daughter has 5 children. The oldest one is working on his PhD. The second one has her master. She's a baseball coach. The next one is a music major, graduate from Fullerton. The next one graduated from Berkeley. The next one is going to Mount Sac College. So they're all
Congratulations.
hopefully doing better.
Congratulations.
And we feel that every time we see the name of a Mexican American graduating from high school or college, of course, we feel, thank God, a little bit of our efforts and hardships is going up. It's
And
getting
we're very
better.
proud. We're
We're
very proud of you guys.
I was going to mention, in making a shift a little bit, Sal, were you a rock thrower at the bureaucracy? Were you an activist? Did you promote social justice in the community of Colton? I would imagine you did. You did. You got people involved in politics. You got people. You helped people run for office.
You were involved in social justice.
Huh?
Were you involved in social justice?
Yes, yes, but I was in the background because I couldn't speak, and public speaking, but I was in the background. I always helped.
You helped candidates get elected to office. Did you help people get into office? Do you help them run for office?
We helped Ruben Ayala from, Chino.
Chino.
Uh-huh.
We helped him, yeah.
Yeah, he was on the
And,
Board of Supervisors
Yes.
for San Bernardino County.
That's when he was elected.
And you helped him?
We had tea parties, we had meetings at our home,
Okay.
people over to the house. And
Yeah.
some of the city employees that worked out in the council, we had some of them at our home too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What about any of the, like Pete Lukey or Pascual Oliva or Abe Beltran? Any of those folks ever ask you for help?
No, I don't know. Did Pete Lukey or Oliva or...
The one that I got involved was the first councilman from Johnny Martinez.
Yes.
Johnny Martinez.
Yeah, 41,
He was the first one.
1941, 42, yeah.
Yeah, he went, yeah, we got involved.
Yeah. Francis and Sal, how about school issues? School issues like some of the things that were happening in the school district. Did you get involved with Sunny Avril and?
I didn't, but he got involved in some of the things that were going on.
At the beginning, in the 60s, when they started, yeah, we got involved. Yeah,
I
Yeah.
stayed home with my kids.
Mhm.
I remember a remark made about, it came out in the paper. Why was he, couldn't understand his opinion towards us, the city, or towards the school system, when we didn't have our kids in Catholic school. We didn't have our kids in public school.
Right, right.
But nevertheless, we were paying taxes, so we had interest because our money was being spent. Because we were not fly-by-night, we'd been here to stay, you know. So he had every right to express, and through his experience, wanted justice for all the kids.
No, I do remember him being